Welcome to the first ever episode of Margin Mavens. We're going to talk a bit about The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. If you would like to not be spoiled, then we would suggest you go back, read the book, and then you come back to us whenever you're ready to hear our thoughts and let us know about what you think. In this episode, there will be a talk of pregnancy loss, so if that is a sensitive topic for you, please take care of yourself while listening. There will be timestamps just in case you'd like to skip that part of the discussion and go on to the next bit. Now stay tuned for the rest of the video. So we read Priory of the Orange Tree.
Loved it.
By Samantha Shannon, primarily known for a completely different series. Like, she has been out and about for a while, right? Which kind of surprised me because this felt, I guess because it was the first book that I had ever read from her, this felt like a
debut novel.
Yeah, like it felt like a debut novel, but then she's got the Bone season books.
Yes.
And the first one came out in 2013. And like she's now got, I think the fifth book is coming out.
Been around for a hot minute.
She's been out for a bit. Wrote The Priory of the Orange Tree while waiting on like revisions or edits on one of these other books.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like really interesting. But it's a big ass book.
It's,
you know,
very big and pretty intimidating at the start just by the sheer size of it.
Yeah, but it's also like incredibly popular despite its size. Like, I think just like looking on Goodreads right now, there's 47,000 people just having it currently reading, but that's just having it marked as them currently reading it.
Right.
You know, like that's
doesn't include people who've already read it.
Yeah, that doesn't include people that's already read it. That doesn't include people that don't have a Goodreads, you know, and are reading it without putting like, hey, I'm currently reading this thing. And then community reviews on Goodreads, there's 46% 5 stars and 1% 1 star. And the discrepancy is very big. So we've got 93,000 people rated it 5 stars, me being one of them. And then only 2,600 people rating it as a 1 star.
Interesting.
Which I think is...
What's the spread between? Is it all just 5 stars or 1 stars?
No, so then the second runner-up obviously is the 4 stars. So there's 69,000 people. So 34%. And then we've got 3 stars being 28,000 and then 2 stars 7,000. And then reading some of these, they're 1 star all around. Like you've got like ease of reading, 1 star, writing style, 1 star, character and character development, 1 star, which I'm kind of curious whether we've read the same book.
I think the character development was good. I can get the ease of reading. I may understand knocking a star or half a star off for that because I did end up, the single quotes took me out so much that it was distracting for a good portion of the book.
Like the quotation marks.
Yeah, as somebody who has somewhat bad eyesight, it was not really easy for me to see. And also because I have a tendency to read quickly if I'm like really into it and I'm reading it and then my eyes skip over something, I could miss like the single quotations. So then going back, I've just stopped sometimes. I had to stop sometimes to be like, wait, is that somebody speaking or is that like internal monologue for the characters? And so it led me to have to sort of like circle back a couple of times and be like, did I get this right? Whereas with double quotations, it's clearly obviously like double quotes speaking. And I think maybe that's more of a me problem than the actual book problem because the only books I've ever read have been double quotations.
No, because I don't think, I mean, I could be very wrong, but I don't think that would be a you problem because I think most people when reading expect those double quotation marks. I think that might be the proper way of doing it. Don't quote me on it. Because I know that this author has like gone to professional schools and stuff for writing, so I do not want to say that I know more than her in any way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of just considered the norm, I think. I noticed it and then I think I quickly trauma blocked it because I was like, I'm going to just not pay attention to this because it'll take away from the experience of reading it. So, for those who do not know, The Priory of the Orange Tree is basically following Iad and Tane, who are on two different sides of the world, right? And not just in like geographical, but in political standings, in beliefs. Um, Iad is a lady in waiting for the Queen Sabrin, and she is a very interesting character. She
Mm-hmm.
is hiding more than we expect. I did not see her lineage coming when it came
Correct.
in.
Yes.
Um, and Tane is somebody that is training to be a dragon rider. And so basically think of that as like the fancy schmancy like military of her people. And it really focuses on this belief of like dragon good, dragon bad. That kind of is the dividing idea throughout most of the book. And so it gets broken up into 6 parts. That doing it in the 6 parts made it really interesting because you were
It
kind of
made it
able.
easier to consume too.
Yeah, it definitely did because you were, especially with the way that we did it, we knew, okay, we're not finishing this part and immediately diving into it. We're going to finish it and have a moment to talk and digest it with somebody and then move on, which I think if I would have sat down and like binge read this book as best as you can with 800 and something page book, things definitely would have been lost because I would have been like, oh, I didn't notice that thing. And I've gone
Right.
through the rest of the book without noticing that thing. What did you think of, who did you prefer, Iad or Tane?
Iad. 100%. I don't know what it is about Tane, but she aggravated me the entire book. I don't think I actually got around to liking her until the end of the book.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was it felt more like she felt entitled to what she wanted. And while I usually support women and femme presenting people and uh in chasing after what they want, there was something about her that just came off the wrong way from the start of the book. I could like I cannot even explain it any, but there was something about Tane that just sort of like rubbed me the wrong way from the get-go. Whereas with Iad, I was like, oh my god, she knows she's a badass. She is not afraid of anything. And she's trying to survive in a place where survival is not necessarily guaranteed because it became obvious at the beginning that she was playing a role.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Tane, she was more like she was definitely more self-assured that her role and her path was the right one, but the attitude that she had around getting to that point just turned me off absolutely the wrong way.
That's fair. I think Tane is a lot more rigid in her beliefs, whereas I mean Iad gets put into a very tough situation because she's from, the Priory of the Orange Tree. She has these beliefs that she's been raised into. She has these facts and stories, right, that she's been told since she was born. And not only is
Mm-hmm.
she part of this priory, but she's somebody of kind of high standing because of her own lineage. And
Correct.
so to be put into a situation where you're like, okay, you believe all these things, but now we need you to go and protect a queen of a lineage that goes directly against everything that we stand for. And so I think Iad, in order to survive, had to learn how to deal with that like gray area because I don't think she would have been able to do it if she was just like, oh, this entire place is lies, and then moves on, which is why I think like the first couple parts, she's definitely struggling because she's a lot more of, oh, I'm going to protect this queen, but I hate her. I
Yes.
think once Queen Sabrin gets humanized to her is when she's like, okay, wait, maybe there's more to this than what was originally told to me. Maybe there's a way to uh coincide my beliefs with the reality of the situation. I think Tane's POVs were a lot of world building.
Yes.
Um and I couldn't quite see her role in the story as a bigger picture until towards the ending. I think she just had a slower build up in terms of when she was getting important. Like I thought Nick Clay was gonna do more as a character.
I feel like he should have done more as a character.
Yeah, I just think that him bringing in the because he was an alchemist. Yeah, him bringing in that like alchemy and the knowledge of these trees and carrying on the legacy of like Janar and everything. I think that was very sweet. I didn't really like Nick Clay so much.
Oh, I did.
Um okay.
He grew on me from the get-go. I don't like I He was just a grumpy old man who was obviously heartbroken and who was like, "You know what? I just want to be here and live my life and do what I want to do." And then, he gets this kid, as far as I'm concerned, dropped
Mhm.
on him. And it turns out he's suddenly wrapped up in the middle of all of the with the dragons and the trees and the nameless one, and he's just stuck in the middle of this. Like, this isn't entirely what I wanted to do, but I think it ultimately led him to coming to peace with like his heartbreak and the loss of the love of his life and all of that. And it just made him a different person by the end of
Mhm.
the book, I think. But I have a soft spot for the grumpy old men who are just like, I don't want to do this, and just end up having to do the thing anyway.
I don't think he's meant to be. I think it's the same thing with like Queen Sabrin. If like the beginning parts of the story, you're not necessarily meant to like Sabrin and you were not necessarily meant to like Nick Clay
Mm-hmm.
because they have not grown as people. Nick Clay really hurts very early on because of those two characters that end up getting the bad end of a sword.
Yeah.
And I think because it was like directly related to kind of like his actions and also like Tane's actions, like I think it was hard for me to not have them grow on me a little bit when I saw how much that like affected them. One character that stood out to me that I was surprised that they didn't do more because they definitely seemed like they would be doing more is like Nighthawk. I think he got painted as this like, oh, he's going to be integral to the way things happen here. And then he ended up just kind of being like, oh, like I care about the queen and I'm working in the background. But the only time we really have any conversations with him is when he's like, I don't know why you don't trust me. And I'm like, but you know why we don't trust you.
I think he was the obvious like distraction to the cupbearer, and the quote obvious character that made sense to be the cupbearer, to lead you to lead the reader to believe that he was the one responsible. And it's kind of disappointing because as much as I disliked Nighthawk, I think he's a very interesting character too, and I would have liked to have seen more of his motivations
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
behind the decisions that he made.
Yeah, this is correct. For the audience out there, I am about to say something that is a spoiler. So if you would like to not hear that spoiler, I will probably put something on the screen to let you know when it is safe to listen again. Um, but the author very quickly showed me that I could not trust her to keep my people safe because of Kit, and I have not recovered from Kit. I don't think I ever recovered from Kit. And he
Counterpoint, I don't think she did a good enough job making everybody unsafe, because Kit was really the only one.
This is fair.
Everybody else was fine.
But counterpoint to your counterpoint, because Kit existed, right? When we end up seeing that Iad got hurt, like when the sister comes and like poisons her, and we have no idea how she is, there was a point where I was like, man, like we genuinely don't know. Did I think that Iad was dead? No. But I genuinely was like, I don't know if she's gonna be okay after this. So I think there was enough doubt in me that it worked out in the author's favor, because I was nervous when Iad got hurt.
Question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you think that they were going to face the Nameless One by the end of the book? Because I, for the majority of the book, did not think that fight was going to happen. And so when it did, I was like, oh. I just thought we were going to have it stretched out among multiple books, not the one.
Yeah, I do think that the fight with the Nameless One, for the amount of buildup leading us up to that point,
right,
I think that fight was very quick. I did like that Iad makes a point of being like, Tane, you can be the one to kill the Nameless One, right? Even though she definitely wanted to be the one to do it. She was like, I am giving you this, honor, essentially. And then Tane's not able to do it. And so Iad still ends up being the one to do it. I think that was really cool, because while she was willing to be the bigger person, she was still able to like get what she wanted. And as a Team Iad person, I really liked that.
I think if Tane had been the one to do it, I would have been a little bit more. I definitely would have chopped the book down another half star, because like there was something just so satisfying of watching Iad go from like this, handmaiden to this badass to literally ending one of the biggest enemies
Slayer of
the entire. Yeah, slay a whole ass dragon.
Yeah.
It was just very satisfying.
One icky side of the book, and I'm sure you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I continue the sentence. One icky part of this book was the creation of the Berethnet line.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of just like came out of nowhere for me.
Oh, I hated it.
And I like really felt for them. Like I felt for, I'm forgetting his name, but the guy, right? Like I really was like, man, that really sucks. Like you thought you like met someone, you had fallen in love with this person, you like started a whole line with this person, just to find out that it's somebody that you thought of as a mom.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
No, it was so icky.
Yeah, I think it was really icky, but I understood why he would never tell anybody. Like,
Yes.
I get it. One, you look like a fool, and two, that's just gross. One thing that stood out to me about a connection, which I'm not sure if the connection is valid or if it's just like, oh, I was thinking about this thing and the author didn't actually mean it and I'm wrong completely. But like the Unceasing Emperor, right? I really liked him. I liked that he wasn't like the super dusty royal that was like not willing to go with any sort of change. I liked that he did not expect marriage from Sabrin. I was really worried about that. But also, I think that there is a implication that he and the Golden Empress were once in love, because he makes a point of saying that when they like broke up, she basically said she would like ruin his entire empire. And now this Golden Empress exists and is actively trying to ruin everything about the dragons that they find so important.
Yes.
And so I was kind of half expecting her to get to be a part of the last fight.
Yes, but as a pirate, like, I think she understood that, one, that wasn't her fight to be involved in, and two, either way, like, the one nice consistency in this book was the constant, like, pirates look out for themselves first and foremost, like, throughout all media. That is, pirates look out for themselves first and foremost, and then you get the inevitable development of, oh, well, now we're going to care. I liked that she didn't care about everything else and she just focused on what she wanted. And she was like, yep, good luck with that. Bye.
Yeah, because I think like going with the idea that she and the Emperor were together at some point, I think it's probably from a standpoint of like, I cared way too much about you guys and I was like broken due to it. So now I'm
Right.
only going to care about me and my people. And I found that really interesting. Another side character that I really love was Chasser, being somebody that really enjoys the like fatherly figure roles when they're not done terribly. I really liked the fact that he genuinely showed that he cared about Iad more than just like what her job was. And I like that he ends up kind of redeeming himself because for a little bit I didn't like him
Mm-hmm.
when I thought that he would also be going against Iad, like not stopping anybody from going against Iad, but he
Mm-hmm.
really redeems himself, I think, in the letter. And when he like actively helps them. Yeah, I another thing that I think was really missing just from being like a comedic moment that I was really wanting is having the like companions of the main characters meeting, right? So
Yes.
like I really wanted like Iad's the Inu, the Aralak. I really wanted him to talk to
Yes.
like Tane's dragon.
I think that would have been interesting.
I think Aralak was really funny because there's like a point where he's like, "Don't follow weird creatures
Yes.
into bad
The
places."
the older grumpy brother, basically.
Yeah, he's like, "Don't do that. Why would you do that?" And I really liked that a lot. Character that I was surprised didn't do more was also Tarosa because we get where he's like this like sexist guy who believes that
Yeah.
um
He got built up to something and then nothing
he got
happened.
built up to something and then Tane like proved him wrong.
And that was it.
And then that was it. We don't see him anymore. You know, I think I don't even know if he got mentioned in the last fight, but I was like, man, like you could have had it to where maybe he helped her in that last fight. He did something with her.
Or
Just
Marosa. We get like the smallest little, oh, she's fine, she's safe in her kingdom. And then that's
Mhm.
it. After she helps Loth and Kit.
Yeah, I really thought that Loth and her were going to like be that like lovers thing. I'm sad that Loth didn't end up with anybody because he's like, there's multiple moments where he's like, you know, like I would really enjoy a companion. And
Yeah.
he just never can have a companion. And I think that's malarkey. I think that he deserves somebody. I think he got put through so much because he was like, man, my beliefs are constantly being attacked.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's like a point where he literally is being described and it seems like he's about to like pass out, not because he's sick, but because he's like, this is a lot. This is a lot for me. I already thought the dragons were bad and now I'm writing one. Like it's a lot. It's kind of funny to me because by the end of part 1, I was already like, I think Iad is a lesbian. Yeah, I also think like Sabrin's husband dying was really sad. Even though I am like a
That was
Iad
a good
and
twist.
Sabrin.
That was a damn good twist, though.
Yeah, like I'm a big fan of Iad and Sabrin. I like their relationship a lot. Like I think they're great. And I know that it probably wouldn't have happened if the husband was still around because I think Sabrin would have been a very incredible and loyal wife to him.
Mm-hmm.
But him dying really hurt me. But I knew almost immediately when Iad like put the rose under her pillow. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, oh, this isn't like handmaiden shit. This is like I'm
This is gay
dreadfully
shit.
gay for you and
Yes.
I can't do anything about that.
Correct.
Uh
Accurate.
and I think like the fact that I don't I see if I was in Sabrin's position, I don't know if I would have acknowledged the rose. Sabrin like makes a point to be like, "Oh, thank you for the rose, Ian." And I was like, "Oh my god, your honor, they're gay. Like this is they're gay for each other."
The best part. The best part of the book is the gay.
Yeah, and I think that that's like a big selling point for the Priory of the Orange Tree. But I like that it wasn't every single page because it made those moments where they did something undoubtfully gay. It made those moments a lot more fun than it just being like, oh, being super fruity the entire time. It made it to
Right.
where my tabs were like, Your Honor, they're gay. And then it moved on to like the bigger things in the story. but I like that it wasn't the focal point. Normalized the fact that they were gay. Like, it didn't make it into this bigger thing of like, these two characters are in love with each other, but they're women. Like, it just went like, oh, they're in love with each other. Cool. The story had pretty good representation because you've got, Sabrin and Iad, who I believe were meant to be parallels of Janart and Nicklay, but they are the ones that get to like
ideally
have their happy ever after.
Ideally, because we don't see it.
We don't see it, but we know. They're giving each other 10 years, which I think is wild.
10 years is wild.
I'm hoping that within those 10 years, Iad specifically like travels, like I'm hoping that
they see each other.
Between. Yeah, because especially if they're trying to create that relationship between the Priory and the kingdom, that feels like something that they would have to do, but I think like the author would do really cool things if I would even be okay with them like publishing a series of like letters that the two of them were writing to each other, as like some romance authors will be like, oh, you want extra scenes? Like, join my newsletter. I would join a newsletter if she was like, oh, here's snippets of letters they wrote to each other over the course of the 10 years.
Would pay money if Samantha Shannon ever listens to this. I will pay you money, ma'am, if you will release it could be literally 2 paragraphs of them reuniting.
Yeah, like
after 10 years.
We read almost 900 pages. We deserve to see them.
I want the payoff.
Just kind of be together, I'm curious whether there's going to be a third book that takes place after their story. Obviously still not following them because Samantha Shannon is, mean to us. But
she hates us. Yes.
I think it'd be really interesting, even if it was like one of those like Legend of Korra things, where the two sets of characters can exist at the same time. But if they were able to say like, oh, Iad and Queen Sabrin, like they did this and this, and there's, there's like evidence of them being together and all of these things. I think that would be really cool. And I think it would I also just have a lot of questions about the cast, like I want to know, who does Loth end up with? I want to know all of these things and what happens to the Draconic princess. I want to know like, okay, what happened to that empire now that we know that the Nameless One has been slayed? How do they come back from that? Because there was probably...
they rebuild? Yeah. What does the rebuilding process look like? What does the world look like in a post-Nameless One world?
Yeah, because then it's obviously like there's gonna be another bad guy. There's always another bad guy. I want to know what was the aftermath. Who picked up the brooms and was cleaning up after everything, I want to know how does Sabrin choose that next leader, because she wants it to be from some of the like founding families. Like,
who did she choose? Do
they vote? Do they have a competition? Become a
democracy.
Like, like how do they do that? And then also like I have a lot of questions.
Who I really like which secondary character I really loved? Loth's sister,
Margaret.
Margaret.
Yeah, I like that she ends up with that guy that I can't remember.
The knight.
Yeah, she ends up with the knight. Yeah. I love the fact that she was very much like, Loth, get with the program. Like, our religion is a lie. You have to accept this. And he's like, wait, no. He's like, wait, no, let me hold on to this. And she's like, no, dude, like, I promise you, it's so much easier when you just let it go.
Yep. Just let it go.
I think she was really cool. I liked the fact that she was like a ride or die for Iad. Like, she was like, they're saying a lot of whack shit about you, but apparently it's kind of cool. So I'm going to just like help you out and remember me. I think she was really cool. One thing though that I do think that was like heavily missed in this book is I think the book would have really done well with like POVs from Sabrin's.
Oh my God. That would have been dangerous though.
I think especially in those points where we were only getting like Tane because Iad was unconscious and healing and whatever. Those points I think would have really been useful, even if they were shorter, because you wanted the focal point to be on Ian and Tane. If they grew to like show us what Sabrin was going through, I think that would have been really cool. Especially
Mhm.
like the first time when Ian has to leave because she's literally being like chased out. I want a scene of Sabrin finding out. You know,
Yes.
like I want her. She like
We
was
know she doesn't
obviously,
believe it.
yeah, she was obviously like, wait a second. There's no way. You know,
Yeah.
like first you're going to say Loth volunteered, and I know that's not true. But now
I'm
you're going to say
genuinely
her?
surprised that like Sabrin did not confront the Nighthawk about both Loth and Eid. Like, what do you mean? She just
What do you mean my
like,
besties are leaving?
yeah, like I mean, I guess on one hand because she is a royal and grew up, you know, in that place following whatever instructions and directions were given to her. So I guess on one hand it does make sense that she just sort of shut up and got in line. But on the other hand, it's like she never came across as the type to shut up and get in line.
Yeah, I think like she definitely had to have known something was up, especially because she tells Loth like, "Oh, I felt powerless in my own court," and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
man, like you could have at least like had a conversation. But granted, because we don't have a POV, we don't know that she didn't. You know, like
Right.
we
Right.
only get Ian not being a part of those conversations. But at that point, that would have made sense because she wasn't even close handmaiden yet. She was just somebody that worked for the queen, but she wasn't like in close quarters with her.
There is a lot of like power to the woman in this book, like girl power.
Yeah, which I think is really
Um,
cool in like a fantasy space.
it is. It is very cool to read something like that in a genre that has been essentially dominated by men when you think
Mm-hmm.
about it. I mean, when you think about some of the bigger fantasy series, in particular Game of Thrones, and the fact that women are not empowered in that series at all, to reading something like The Priory where women are empowered and what happens to them is not just for the sake of plot, it's also for the sake of development.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very striking change and a very welcome change in that aspect.
I think it was cool to see it from the lens of women doing what needs to be done. And I
Mm-hmm.
like that Queen Sabrin eventually comes to a point where she takes control of her own legacy. And I liked the notions of we as women should not just be thought of as means to an heir. You know, and I
Right.
think it was really good to see Sabrin have those conversations and being like, I'm not a good enough queen if I don't give them a child. But once I give them a child, I'm no longer
Queen.
queen. Like I just end up becoming mother of the queen when my child is of age.
Yes.
Um and considering that she became queen so young, I think that that was really tough for her. She definitely had to have felt like, "Oh, I'm just being raised to have a kid, but once I have that kid, I get pushed aside because now the focus is going to be on continuing that line."
Correct.
And I think that that's like a reality a lot of women face is this like push to have children.
Hmm.
But, you know, and I'm sure you can talk more about that from a better point of
Particularly
view.
after marriage, you get that within days, sometimes weeks, you get this. So when you're having kids, question almost
Yeah.
immediately. Yeah.
A-
It's
And it's hard
ridiculous.
because once you have kids, once you have a partner, like the world around you wants you to lose
Who
parts
you
of
are.
parts of your own identity because it's like, oh, I'm no longer this person that has these interests and has these passions. Now I'm a mother, now I'm a wife, now I'm,
Correct.
all of these other labels. And it's like, yeah, but I'm still
It
a person.
it's especially difficult too because it's when you become a parent, you're naturally going to lose bits and pieces of yourself because bits and pieces of yourself are walking around and talking and growing and learning. And so to be able to read, you know, Sabrin just being like, you know what, I'm not just a womb for you to watch
Mm-hmm.
and keep an eye on was really great. And as difficult as it was to read about what happened with the baby and the miscarriage and what that means for Sabrin going forward, it was nice to see her sort of be relieved of that burden and be allowed to be just Queen Sabrin.
Yeah, especially when she's told that not only has she lost that child, but she will not be able to have another.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, okay, I can't, so I should not be blamed for this not being something that's going to happen.
I also found it very interesting that, like, she played it close to the vest. Like, she didn't, like, announce it right off the bat, because there's a lot of parallels between that and what women in real life go through, or at the very least people who can and are able to have children. And like 1 in 4 pregnancies, I think, end in miscarriage. So it's like watching that, and like it's not talked about. It's hush hush because it's sad, and nobody wants the sad. They just want the happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody wants to know when you lose a baby. They just want to know when you have the baby. So the parallel was very interesting in that, and I like that she eventually just sort of like took the stand and was like, no, we're gonna do things like this now.
I think it creates a space to have those tough conversations. Overall, yeah, I rated The Priory of the Orange Tree with 5 stars. I haven't rated too many 5 stars this year, but I think this was my first fiction 5-star. I think once you get past the size of it, because I think that's a lot of people's complaints, is that the story itself felt like it could have been broken up into parts, like into different books. And I liked that it all happened in one book and I didn't have to wait for another one. Like, I liked knowing that their story as a whole are within those same pages.
I rated it 4 stars, and I did take a bit away for the single quotes, because difficult enough to read sometimes when the formatting is a little different. But also, one thing that really stood out to me by the time I finished the book was just how quickly everything happened at the end. Yeah. Like, there was all this great foundational world building happening, and then all of a sudden, boom, like,
Nameless One is Slayed.
The book's done. And it's like, I'm a sucker for the endings. Like, you give me a good solid ending with at least like an idea of like everything's going to be the same or everything's going to change, but everything's like happy. Like, I'm a good sucker for a happy ending. So not getting that like complete happy ending was a little disappointing.
Yeah, I think I can't remember if there was an epilogue for the book.
It was very small, and I think it was just Iad focused.
Yeah,
which was great.
I think it would have done well to have a moment where you kind of, even if it was just like a jump into that future, you know, of like, oh, these are like a recap. The only thing that's coming to my mind right now, which is a very different genre, is like the ending of Legally Blonde, right?
Yeah.
Where we are told what happens with all these characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that does a really good job because people like closure. People like knowing what happens to the characters that I just spent 900 pages being attached to.
I've committed time to read this book. I want the closure. I need the closure so that unless you're giving me another book about these characters. Like,
if you listen, Samantha Shannon, if I wake up in a month and it's like, oh, sequel to Priory of the Orange Tree follows the same characters, I'd be like, all right, I get you now. But if I never get that book that follows them, even if it's like a novella, you know, I think a lot of fantasy writers can get away now with, she even does it. I think when I was looking at her Goodreads, she has stories within her stories. Because I saw like book 2 of the Bone season, and then I saw like book 2.5. You know, like even if you did that, to where the next official sequel is
it's like half the size.
Yeah, it's half the size. Just like a quarter of the size. Like, I don't care.
Yes.
And it's like 1.5. You know, I think people would be able to do really well finding out how everything kind of played out.
And it wouldn't be a bad idea, should she decide to move forward with creating a sequel to Priory of the Orange Tree, having that bridge, like that small, 300-400 page book of just here's what's going on between the end of the Priory of the Orange Tree and the beginning of the sequel.
Yeah.
And this is what happened.
Yeah, because I also think if she does that, right, then if there ever is another book that follows it and isn't preceding it, you also can focus on that new story as opposed to being like, okay, what happened to these characters though?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we'll be able to say, like, okay, we know what happened to them. We can move on to this next generation or this next group.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
How am I supposed to focus on other characters when I'm still thinking about the characters that you just gave me?
Yeah. I think that would be good. So Samantha Shannon, if you're listening, get on that. We will be beta readers if you need.
Yes.
You know, we will add in those double quotation marks. I will hand paint them in on your copy edits. Don't even worry, I've got you. Okay.
Give us a taste.
Give us a little peek.
I'm fiending. I need a little more.
Please,
May I have
give
some
us more.
That is only a taste of our thoughts and opinions on the Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. There is so much more that we could and probably will talk about over on our Patreon. Next up will be The Chalice of the Gods by Rick Riordan, which we are very excited to dig into together, especially as Percy Jackson nerds and aficionados. But until next time, thank you for listening, and if no one has told you this today, you are loved and you matter.